How do we understand the graph of distance versus time? Let's have time on the x-axis and the distance on the y-axis. The time on the x-axis has intervals of 1 minute and the total distance covered has intervals of 1 kilometer on the y-axis. This graph will help us see how far the vehicle moved over time. If the vehicle was stationary, this is what we would see. The distance covered is 0. If it moves slowly, we will see this gradual sloped line. It covers little distance every minute, which implies that it moves at a slow pace. And what if it moves very fast? Yes, we would see a steeper line. The distance covered each minute will be a lot more than in the previous case. We will understand better with some examples. Let's look at this graph we have. The x-axis has intervals marked at 1 minute each. We can see how much distance has been covered each minute. What we see in this case is that the vehicle moved 2 kilometers each minute, and that is constant for this entire time period. Covering constant distance in each time period is an example of? Yes, it's an example of uniform motion. What I want you to notice is that when uniform motion is charted, what we see is a straight line. 1 minute, 2 kilometers. 2 minutes, 4 kilometers. 3 minutes, 6 kilometers. The total distance covered in 3 minutes is 6 kilometers, and each minute the vehicle covered 2 kilometers. Now let me ask you a question. How much would be the total distance covered in 10 minutes? Correct. The total distance covered would be 20 kilometers. We can use the graph seen to arrive upon the answer, but we could also calculate the total distance as 10 times 2 kilometers, which is 20 kilometers. As the vehicle is in a state of uniform motion, the distance covered will be directly proportional to the time. If the time is increased by a certain factor, the distance will also be increased by the same factor. In this particular case, the speed remains constant at 2 kilometers per minute. Now let me ask you a different question. How long does it take to cover 10 kilometers? Well done. It will take 5 minutes. It is very straightforward. We mark a horizontal dotted line from the y-axis at the 10 kilometer point and then drop a vertical dotted line to the x-axis to get the answer. 10 kilometers are covered in 5 minutes. Now listen to the next question carefully. If we want to calculate the distance covered in the 3rd minute, how would we do that? I just want to know the distance covered in the 3rd minute. I'm talking about the distance covered in this duration. Let's have a look. We draw 2 lines vertically up from the 2nd and the 3rd interval on the x-axis until they intersect the line. Then we draw 2 lines parallel to the x-axis until they intersect the y-axis. Let's name these points T1 and T2, D1 and D2. The distance covered in time T2 minus T1 equals D2 minus D1. So what we get here is that the vehicle travelled 2 kilometers in the 3rd minute. I know what you must be thinking right now. Did we need to do all this? Probably not, because we already know that this vehicle is travelling at a uniform speed of 2 kilometers per minute, which is why this is a straight line. But it is a good idea to understand this graph really well. So if I ask you the total distance covered by the vehicle in the 2nd, 3rd and the 4th minute, you would draw 2 vertical lines like this and then 2 horizontal lines to find the total distance covered. 6 kilometers in 3 minutes. How about charting the journey of a vehicle which moves at varying speeds? Can we chart it in a similar way? And if so, what will the graph look like?